Today is July 17th, 2023. I am sitting here with a lovely lady. Would you like to give your name, age, occupation, and location in the state of Illinois?
My name is Marlene Hocking. I'm 49 years old. I reside in Wabash County, Illinois, and I'm a farmer.
All right. So, you're a farmer. Are you a farmer on paper? Or what is your involvement in terms of the entities?
Well, I am legally a farmer with the United States Department of Agriculture. I am listed as a farmer. I own my own farmland and I manage that farmland. Um, I am involved with other entities that I'm related to either through marriage or through my own family that I help with. And I do various activities involved with these entities, but that includes things like uh, choosing the seed varieties that we're going to plant and getting that ordered, uh, choosing and ordering chemicals and fertilizers and other inputs that we need to produce a crop. So I contact different input dealers and find out their price quotes and get the best deal that I can manage. Um, I also deal with the crop insurance agents on all the crop insurance, choosing what kind that we get. Turning in the yields, I have to calculate the yields off of scale tickets and that we get. And, I do other things that are more office related, like payroll, but I do a wide variety of business, of business.
So you said that you were involved in multiple entities, primarily based in family, correct?
Yes.
All right. So then, what do you think is some of the relation between farms and family?
I think that most farmers will tell you that it is hard to separate the farm life from the family life. It kind of goes hand in hand.
So you came from a farm family yourself, correct?
Yes.
All right. So could you briefly describe some of your childhood duties as a farm kid, especially as a female farm child that had a couple of older brothers, and some of what that looked like?
As a child, I learned to help take care of the livestock, feeding it, watering it. We had pigs and cattle both at a time. Um, I went out into the fields a lot from a very young age because they just didn't have the child care because my mom was actively working on the farms, driving tractors and things. So I just went along with them and learned to do things. I learned to drive at a very young age and would help move the pickup trucks around. And I then later learned to, well, I was 16, just fresh got a driver's license. I was hauling anhydrous wagons to the field. And I don't think very many 16-year-olds do that, but there's quite a few in farm families probably do. Uh, and pulling the header wagons and just doing whatever needed done. Didn't learn to drive the tractors a whole lot because my older brothers were already doing that. I wasn't needed for that. My mom was doing that and my dad was doing that. They didn't need me to do that. But dad always liked to have a helper to come along to help him fill the planter with seed or whatever else needed done.
So, were there different kind of expectations for what you would do in life compared to your brothers?
I was expected to go to college. Actually, I was told at a very young age that I would go to college and get a degree so that I could go out and get a job. My older brothers were expected to be the ones to take over the farm. I was not expected to farm.
You're actually first generation, correct? A college educated.
Um, yeah, I mean, my mother has got a high school diploma. My dad didn't even get a high school diploma. He dropped out at 16 to work on the farm. My two older brothers did both get associate's degrees, but I was the first one in our actual family to get a bachelor's degree.
So, Was there any other notable kind of differences in terms of expectations for you compared to your brothers in terms of the type of farm labor, perhaps, that you were expected to do?
I just really wasn't expected to learn to do some of the tractor driving and some of that they did because I wasn't needed to do it. I mean, I occasionally drove a tractor pulling around a auger wagon or something in the fall, but I didn't go out and disc the fields or that kind of thing.
And would you say that there was more that you tended to do with your mother on more of the home front, keeping the house together front then?
Oh, definitely. There were times that it was my job to pretty much keep the house clean because mom was too busy otherwise. So I was expected to clean the house, and at times I was expected to cook the supper and that kind of thing. I mean, as a kid growing up, I at times felt it was wrong that my brothers didn't have to keep their own room clean. I was expected to clean their room.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I mean, I just kind of thought, "Oh, most kids have to keep their own room clean. Why do I have to clean their room?" But it was because dad expected them to go and help him more. And since I was a girl, I was expected to stay at home and help more with those kinds of domestic chores.
So, kind of maintaining sort of traditional gender roles.
Yes.
All right. What did you kind of from home do sort of to aid with like the farm? Did you prepare like meals, take them out, things like that?
Of course. I helped with some of those things, but we usually did not fix a whole meal and take it out. We a lot of times would fry up some bologna sandwiches and buy some fruit pies or honey buns or something and pack it along with the water jugs and took it with us. And we would come home at night, and sometimes I would get dropped off earlier at home than the other so that I could cook a meal so that by the time they got in for the night, there might be a hot meal on the table waiting for them.
There you go. There you go. Earlier, you mentioned honestly somewhat of a cute story about wanting to kind of take on more of the male type roles. Could you please state that for our audience, please?
I remember distinctly being a young girl that thought that I enjoyed spending time with my father. I was a daddy's girl. And he sometimes would want to take my brothers to go do something. And he would say, "Well, let's go, boys." Well, I told him I wanted to be a boy because I wanted to go with them. But I wasn't allowed to. And it really probably because I was so much younger. It really probably wasn't necessarily because I was a girl. But as I got older, I still didn't go. So maybe it was because I was a girl.
All right. So then, kind of with all of this, as a kid, what was your overall perception of agriculture? Did you know that you wanted to be involved in it in some way? Why or why not? Like, were you involved in some of the sort of traditional ag kid extracurricular activities of like 4-H, FFA, ag classes?
I was very involved with 4-H my whole time growing up. It was really the only thing I was allowed to do until I got about high school age. Well, I did do a little bit otherwise in junior high, but not much. But pretty much I had to get to the point where I had a driver's license before I could do very much outside of 4-H. I did not participate in FFA. I asked the advisor about it, but he insisted I had to take ag classes, and that did not fit into my schedule since I was supposed to go to college and I was one of the top students in my class. They kept pushing me to the higher level classes, the more, well, we had weighted classes, towards the weighted classes and that kind of thing, so that I was more prepared for college. So I didn't do those things. But I I enjoyed my time growing up on the farm, but at times also resented it because so much of our energy was put into the farm and there wasn't much life outside of the farm. So I did sometimes resent not being able to participate in certain things. Just for example, my first grade class, Every girl in the class was in Girl Scouts except me. And that was back when they all wore the same little Girl Scout outfits to school the day they were going to have their meeting. And I was the only one that didn't have it, the only one that didn't do it. And, kids notice these things.
Mm-hmm.
So there were times I didn't like that. So I thought maybe I might grow up and get a job and marry someone else and not live on a farm, but that's not what happened.
And you kind of mentioned in our previous conversations that some of the growing up in farm culture really affected sort of how dating life went for you. And you've mentioned that that kind of led you to ultimately deciding to marry a farm kid himself. Could you kind of outline some of the implications of that?
Well, I dated boys from various backgrounds. I found that the city boys didn't understand me and didn't understand farm life. Didn't understand that when it was spring and fall, it meant you went to the field and you worked long hours and you didn't have much time for much else. You don't just show up at a farm girl's house unannounced because she may or may not be there and you never know what you may find her doing when she is there. So I discovered that it was easier to find somebody who would understand my background and understand me better if he himself had experienced some of the same things. So I ended up with a farm boy.
There you go. I guess backpedaling real quick before we start jumping into more of your early married life. So you were kind of a child of the 80s. You grew up in the 80s. That was a good chunk of your childhood. Now, in the 80s, of course, as you know, there was a financial farm crisis. Did you notice any differences sort of in the household or generally speaking, stress levels, anything like that, during that time, or any of the impending kind of foreclosures or issues revolved around that in that era?
I do believe that my parents were under more stress than normal. I think that kind of showed occasionally they were a little bit more short tempered, maybe because of it. And I know that while we always lived frugally be able to put the money back into the farm, the belt got a little bit tighter. There were issues of no longer being able to afford orange juice and things like that. Just because it was a little bit tighter, and it didn't help later on when there was an elevator that went bankrupt that my father had taken a lot of grain to, and they owed him a lot of money. That also caused a lot more stress on the family because that was just a lot of money that disappeared
Mm-hmm.
and wasn't able to be regained. Very little of that did he ever get. I missed out on opportunities. I had the chance to go to Washington, D.C. because I was a good student, considered a leader, and was chosen to have an opportunity to go, but it cost a little bit of money. And my father told me that I could go if he got his money, but he didn't, so I didn't.
All right, thank you very much. So I guess moving on to some of your early married life, what was sort of your expectations kind of when you were first married? Because I know that you got a college degree and you were a teacher, correct?
Yes. I did. I got a college degree and I worked at first, and for the most part, we tried to live off of my income and put anything that my husband made back into the farm. And I just didn't have as much involvement with the farm. Of course, I still had a little, but not very much. Uh, I kept busy with my work. But years later, it became more of an issue that I was needed more to become more active on the farm. And, um, and I also had a situation where I was starting to own land on my own, unconnected to my husband, which made it easy at that time, or should I say easier at that time, for me to become established as my own farmer. They did not make it easy on me. They made me prove that I had the resources to farm on my own, separate from my husband, that I had the, you know, commitment and that I was going to be putting in the work
Mm-hmm.
also.
And I mean, I guess kind of going with that, how do you think like being a female farmer and being a farm wife and being so involved, how do you have you experienced any sort of issues from either hired hands or from the people that you do business with, based around being a woman?
I really haven't had problems with hired hands not wanting to take direction from me. I have occasionally been around them when I think they've forgotten that I'm there and that I'm a female, and I am witness to their occasionally crude conversation. Had one years ago that made me uncomfortable because he noticed all too well how a certain top fit on me, and let's just say I never wore that around him again. Being a female, I have definitely found that some men don't think they have to deal with you. And literally, I've had times when they would call up one of the men that are involved with the operations, to ask to purchase something or what how much they need or that kind of thing. And for them to turn around and say, well, we don't do that. You got to go and call her. She's the one that's going to have the answers to that. She's the one who purchases those items. Um, so, some of these people still think it's a man's world and they don't want to deal with the woman, then they lose out on the business. I've had some younger men who have started out as salesmen going, I didn't know I needed to talk to you, and that's why I was never making the sale. Once they figured it out, they started making sales. And they have instructed, as they've gotten up into management, instructed their staff to say, don't forget the women. That woman that you might have seen might be the one you got to talk to get the sale. She might be the one in charge of doing that.
All right. So you have children. You have three daughters, correct?
Yes.
All right. So, kind of going with it, do you think that, based on your experiences as a farm kid yourself, has that impacted how you raised your daughters? Do you think there would have been anything very different had you had sons instead of daughters in terms of how you raised them?
There would have been some differences. I mean, I think that we encouraged our daughters to do things somewhat the way they would have no matter what gender they were. I mean, I tried to not only let them experience the normal girl toys, but also the boy toys. If they were interested in trains and tractors, then they got trains and tractors. I didn't limit them to just dolls and kitchen stuff. But I do think that if we'd had sons, they would have probably been a little more involved and encouraged more to go into agriculture and into farming. It is just the traditional way of thinking. It's the way a lot of this has been done for many, many generations. And it's kind of hard to break that mold on some things. But our kids were involved with some of this and were out in the field some, but they weren't in it anywhere near like I was. I gave them the opportunities to be involved in some of those extracurricular things. If they wanted to be in Girl Scouts, they got to be in Girl Scouts. If they wanted to try tennis, they got to try tennis.
And I'm sure they thank you very much for that opportunity. So, over time, over your own experiences, what's been your personal viewpoint and the implications of the ever increasing technological advancement in agriculture?
Well, I mean, we use a lot more technologically advanced things than what existed years ago. I can sit at a computer and look up and see exactly what kind of seed and how much of it was planted where when. That helps me be able to accurately report to the FSA office. It also helps on landlord uh, that on landlords that do share rent, so that we know exactly what products were used on their ground and what we should be billing to them.
Mm-hmm.
We also do soil testing on our ground, and that helps us know what nutrients are needed where, and we that also affords us the opportunity to implement variable rate technology, which allows the machine to spread exactly the amount of nutrient that is needed, exactly where it is needed. Thus, we are saving money and becoming more sustainable by not overusing product that we don't need.
All right, that's very, very good. And then, so you work more so in an office type setting in all of this.
Yes, I primarily work in an office on the things that I do. I mean, I deal with a lot of the things that are the paperwork side of things more. I mean, I do occasionally make it out into the fields to help move equipment, or to maybe take a tractor to help them pull out something that got stuck in the field, or that kind of thing. But I do not on a regular basis end up actively working in the field. That is where my husband shines. He is excellent at learning how to run a piece of equipment, and if it breaks down, how to fix it. That is his strong point. I am stronger with the math and stronger with dealing with all of that red tape stuff. If my husband had to do payroll, they probably wouldn't get a paycheck.
Oh my. So then, in the office space, what are your coworkers like? Are they family? Are they male? Are they female? Kind of describe some of what that looks like.
Um, in the office space that we use for my husband's family farm operation, I am working primarily with his mother and his sister in law. We kind of divide up certain duties, but some things we all pitch in and work on, um, so that everything that needs to get done gets done.
All right. And so, kind of comparing the different operations you've seen, what are some of the biggest trends that you've noticed, or the biggest differences you've noticed in terms of how the farms function, especially when it comes to the jobs of the females?
You're seeing more variety in what women are doing. Years ago, women were support personnel. They were there to pick someone up and drop them somewhere else, or to bring a meal to the field. Nowadays, they could be the one running the equipment. We actually have a hired hand, a very nice lady who's very good at running a tractor and a combine. She's not discriminated against because she's female with us. We will welcome women to come work, whether it's in the office or in the field. But not every place is like that yet. But I think we're getting there.
All right. Well, my final question here, I suppose, is why do you think so many women are reluctant to be involved in agriculture? And what do you have to say to any young girl or young woman out there that is interested in becoming involved?
I think because it has been traditionally a male dominated field, people sometimes feel intimidated and don't want to go to the extra effort to work against the tide to get into it. But if you really want to do it, just do it. Don't let some man tell you you can't, because I'm going to tell you, you can.
All right. Well, that was Marlene Hocking, uh, farmer, farm wife, mother, etc., etc. We thank you very much for coming in today.